5 Live Formula One.
Hello, welcome back to live coverage of round 9 of the Formula One World Championship. Final practice in Barcelona coming at you in about 5 minutes. The sun is out, fans are packing into the Circuit de Barcelona, Catalonia, and guiding you through this one is myself, Harry Benjamin, and the former F2, F3 and Alpine F1 development driver, Oliver Caldwell. You've come back for day 2, Ollie. How was Friday for you?
It was exciting, and yeah, thanks for letting me come back for day 2. It's not usual. I meet someone for the first time and I chat their ear off about cars for the whole day, and then I get asked back so soon. So yeah, new experience.
What's harder, driving a car or doing commentary for free practice?
Doing commentary for free practice, most definitely. I know Barcelona like the back of my hand. I know every corner there, every gear, and yeah, usually I need to talk to my engineer around there, usually to tell him that I'm not a fan of the setup that he has put on the car. But yes, to watch the cars going around and try and commentate on it is a bit more use of my brain.
Oh, good. Well, no, that's what we like to challenge our co-commentators. But it is a track that the drivers know so well. Just over 4.6 kilometres, 2.8 miles, 14 turns. 6 to the left and 8 going to the right. It's I wouldn't say it's a favourite, it's just one that we all tend to know rather well because of, well, I think every series, you were saying yesterday, pretty much does their testing here.
Yeah, everything from Formula 4 testing all the way up to Formula 2 that is with the F1 this weekend, and then F1 races here and tests here. F1 used to do a huge amount of testing here back in the day. Yeah, all these drivers know it, whether it might be their first time driving around here in an F1 car. They've done a huge amount of laps around here. It just seems to be a staple in the Formula 1 calendar.
Well, I'll tell you what, you say you know this place like the back of your hand. Talk us through a lap.
Okay, yeah, interesting. So, coming down the main straight is the first of the DRS zones. Quite a long straight and also quite a long distance from where the starting grid is to turn 1. So, usually makes for some interesting race starts because the cars can actually get a slipstream even if they've got a bad start into turn 1 and already pull off a move. Turn 1 is one of the biggest braking zones on the track, down a few gears there. High speed, I wouldn't class it as a slow speed because it's sort of 3rd or 4th gear through there. Using a lot of the curbs, careful not to go wide, and through the runoff at turn 2 into a very high speed long right hander of turn 3. Huge amount of G's being pulled on the drivers there, and we saw Ollie Bearman have a spin as well, just as he ran out on the exit, lucky to not hit the wall or get beached. Into turn 4, quite a short straight in between, where we've seen Lewis Hamilton and Nico Rosberg collide at the start of the 2016 Grand Prix. So another great corner for overtaking, especially if the car's got a bit loose through turn 3. The run into turn 5 is downhill, so it's quite a difficult corner. The cars tend to sometimes lock front left there as the corner goes down and the cars become a bit unloaded, usually getting quite a bit of understeer there. Carrying on downhill through turn 6 into a very difficult turn 7 where the corner goes slightly off camber and then goes quite sharp uphill through turn 8, difficult for traction, and we saw Charles Leclerc's car moving around quite a bit there on his push lap. Into the second high-speed corner of this track, turn 9. Yeah, very difficult corner there. It used to be flat, now it's a lift, depending how confident you are and the fuel load in the car. Don't want to run out wide there. The gravel comes up very quickly, and it's got a very sharp exit curve, which can unsettle the car and damage these new floors. Into the second DRS zone of the track, so really a great overtaking place into the new profiled, I say new, couple of years old now, turn 10. Made it a bit wider there, a bit easier for overtaking and some interesting lines. We saw a couple of people lock up there and go straight on yesterday. With the wind, it can be quite a difficult corner. Into 11 and 12, these corners are quite annoying. There's not really anything you can do here, sort of staying in the middle of the track, trying to get your exit well in sector 3 for the newer last 2 corners that are, again, extremely high speed, trying to get your run down the straight line, especially if you're following someone, but a huge amount of load going through your neck on the other side now and then across the line.
Wow, thanks, Ollie. You can go now.
Brilliant. Yeah, that was a lot of talking. I'm done for the day.
Done for the day. You've done your hard work. I mean, that is a track. It does open itself up to some good overtaking opportunities, as you were saying. I think it's over 600 metres from pole to turn 1 down to that right-hander, and then you're sort of spat out of that right-hander of turn 3 into 4, where we saw Mercedes drivers back in 2016 come together. So it does open itself up to some good racing, particularly now that they've gotten rid of that chicane as well over the last couple of years. We've gotten used to now basically two almost flat right-handers seeing off the lap. So to get rid of that tricky chicane was probably one of the best things they've done.
Yeah, it seems quite a long time ago now, but the reprofiling of Sector 3, I think, has really opened up this track to a lot more overtaking than we were used to. That really tight old 13, 14, 15 chicane, if you can all remember, was super tight. There wasn't really any overtaking you could do there. It was a killer on the rear tyres, but didn't necessarily add anything at all to the racing. So now with this high-speed 13, 14, the ability to, reprofile the car for maybe taking advantage of these high-speed corners, getting that DRS and potentially overtaking into turn one, it's a much better change. And also from a driver's perspective, I think everyone is fairly happy with that new Sector 3.
Certainly is, but we're just then we are underway now, I should say, for FP3. Coming out of the garage is the Alpine of Franco Colapinto, heading out onto the circuit and into turn one. Tough day yesterday, wasn't it, Ollie, for Franco Colapinto? What is this now? His third race back as a Formula One driver. It hasn't been the smoothest of starts for him.
No, it's never easy to jump in after the season has begun, missing out on all the pre-season testing. A new team for him, of course, as well for this year, so the car will be feeling different to the one he drove last year. But yeah, not a great start to the season, and not a good start to this weekend for him either, having that issue at the end of FP1 which cut his running a bit short. But yeah, not looking very happy in the car this weekend for whatever reason.
Yeah, he had a hydraulic leak at the end of FP1, which curtailed his running just by a few minutes, but just seems to be maybe lacking a little bit of confidence. That's why he's, I think, the only man out on track at the moment. He's gone onto the medium tyre. Nobody else in a rush. In fact, the majority of drivers not even in their cars, just standing in the garage, getting a last bit of fluid in to their body, hydrating themselves, as Liam Lawson is doing with a wry smile. He had a good day yesterday. Both Racing Bulls up inside the top 10, and of course off the back of his first points of the season. Now, one of the big talking points coming into this weekend is all about this technical directive that the FIA have introduced. Now, they are introducing stiffer tests on front wing flexibility from this weekend, aimed at preventing teams deliberately exploiting wing flex to enhance the aerodynamics. Flexing front wings, as Andrew Benson on the BBC Sport website has very handily described for us, with the use of clever carbon fibre manufacturing techniques, helps teams balance the cars between high speed and low speed corners. They also boost top speed by backing off on straights without compromising cornering performance, because the wing lifts up at the lower speeds when the car is cornering. It's Red Bull that appear to have really been leading the charge for this rule change, in the hopes that this could reel in McLaren in particular and allow them to close up that gap. In terms of numbers, the permitted level of flex has been reduced from 15 millimetres of movement to 10 millimetres of movement, which doesn't sound like a lot, Ollie, but if there is performance to be had, well, there's a reason all the cars are flexing in the first place, because it gives them something. But from what we've seen so far, and I still think we've yet to see truly what it's bringing to the table, at the front of the grid, it doesn't really feel like it's had much of an effect so far.
Yeah, definitely. These teams have known this has been coming, I think, since the start of the season. So they have been trialling these at different events without, maybe telling the media. It's not something new for those teams. However, I think we are seeing potentially a bit of a difference down in the tighter midfield with some of the teams who maybe didn't have the budget to do the testing. So it's being difficult for those teams.
55 minutes and 58 seconds remaining of this session, by the way. With still now 4 cars out on track: Bortoleto, Stroll and Alonso, along with Franco Colapinto out on the circuits, as finally some of the teams are now strapping in their drivers into the cockpits of their Formula One cars. Well, 55 minutes and 30, 29, 28, 27 seconds remain of free practice 3. The final chance then to get the teams up to speed with the setup of their cars before we get into that qualifying hour a little later on. Well, We will bring you continued coverage of this session. Right, grandstands are packed out, by the way, and let's give you a proper sync up. 54 minutes, 53, 52, 51 seconds remaining with 3 cars out on track at the moment. Colapinto, Bortoleto and Fernando Alonso all out onto the circuit. Could this be Fernando Alonso's first point score? He's already having a little wave to the fans in the grandstand, is Alonso, as he comes into the pits. It's a big circuit, big track for him this, obviously on home soil. His last win in Formula One came here back in 2013. It's a long old wait.
That is a long wait for a last win, and yeah, one I'm sure he does remember fondly. But yeah, it looks like Fernando's just done a little parade lap around the track there. We saw him driving around, waving to the fans on a very slow lap back into the pits. Quick pit stop there by the Aston Martin team, and back out with a fresh set or new set of hard tyres. But yeah, he seems more confident in that Aston Martin this weekend than Lance Stroll. He had a bit of a power unit issue, it looked, in FP1, but bounced back nicely for FP2, being well inside the top 10. A good streak from him in what looks to be a difficult car.
Yeah, let's see how they go for this weekend. But indeed, we always tend to see this in FP3. No one's really in a major rush to go out on the circuit, are they? Why is that, Ollie?
I think it's because, you know, most of the car testing and sensor checks are done in FP1 and FP2. That's for if they have an issue, they can get it sorted pretty quickly, and overnight they got more time to do it. FP3 is a bit of a weird one. They're starting to get down on the tyres that they can use. The track conditions aren't necessarily what qualifying is going to be, a bit later, so they'll wait as late as they can and try and get the most similar conditions to qualifying. Talking of track conditions, air temperature is 29 degrees with the track temperature at 43, so a bit cooler than we saw in FP2 yesterday, but as that ramps up into qualifying, it will be, yeah, FP2 was more the similar session.
Yeah, tyres always the talk of the town as well. Pirelli bringing the hardest compounds in the range for this weekend compared to the previous 2 rounds where we've had the softest. So we've got the C1 hard, the C2 medium and the C3 soft tyre, and Pirelli expecting a 2-stop race for Sunday's Grand Prix. So we know for the likes of McLaren, especially that rear degradation doesn't seem to affect them. It's one of their strengths, and particularly when you're coming through the sector 3 of this circuit, you've got that right-hander at turn 12 in particular, really quite rear limiting at times. So that should give them a nice advantage going into Sunday's Grand Prix. But of course, this is a high-speed track as well, Ollie, which seems to be beneficial for Red Bull.
Yeah, Red Bull definitely seems to be struggling more in that slow speed than we have seen other teams. And that Sector 3 is, you know, it begins in a very slow speed way. So if they're struggling there, especially with a track that has this rear deg, we could see them start to struggle a bit more in the race. Teams not really liking the hard tyre this weekend, and just reading up on Pirelli's notes, that's because it doesn't seem to be biting in at either axle. They're getting quite a lot of understeer through the high speed of turn 3, turn 9, 13 and 14 on that hardest compound, which are creating quite a lot of front graining on the front left. But then it seems to also fall away in Sector 3 on the rears. So yeah, that hard compound not really working for anyone, and that's why we didn't see a lot of teams running it in FP2 yesterday.
Well, not seeing a lot of running either at the moment. Still now just 2 cars out on track. Thank you very much, Gabriel Bortoleto and Franco Colapinto. But the grandstands and the hills surrounding this circuit absolutely packed out with all the local Spanish fans wanting to get a glimpse of 2 of their home drivers, Fernando Alonso, as we've discussed, but of course Carlos Sainz as well. And well, actually yesterday wasn't a great day, was it, for the 2 Williams drivers? Alex Albon obviously missed out on FP1. Victor Martins, the Formula 2 driver, was in place of him getting his first FP1 outing. So Albon's a bit on the back foot, but just seemed like they really lacked something here, and they haven't got the best track record here either.
Yeah, it was great to see Victor Martins, a rookie in FP1, in the car. Unfortunately for him, as much as he would have liked, I don't think he got a very quick run in. Williams taking that session to have the metal grids on the car to do a lot of sensor testing and aero testing. But yeah, they have dropped down the order, especially in FP1 and FP2 this weekend, after a strong in an interesting way, Monaco, where they got double points. Potentially those new regulations on the front wing impacting them slightly more than some other teams.
Yeah, as we say, this technical directive, while we might not be seeing a massive impact yet at the front of the field, perhaps it is having a little bit of an effect on those towards the back, where budget might not have been allocated and really getting on top of this technical directive, which they've all known has been coming since really the start of the season. So for the likes of the Williams cars, maybe the Alpines as well, although Pierre Gasly was having a good session yesterday, as we've discussed. Colapinto still finding or trying to find confidence in that car. That's why he's out there on his 6th lap at the moment, just coming towards the middle sector, along with he's just behind Gabriel Bortoleto, the reigning Formula 2 champion. In terms of how the championship standings look, by the way, coming into round 9 of the Formula 1 World Championship, well, it is Oscar Piastri who leads, but that lead was cut down to 3 points after Lando Norris took pole and the win in Monaco, with Max Verstappen just 25 points behind Piastri, who heads the championship, so within a race win. George Russell is 4th, Charles Leclerc the top 5. Then over in the McLaren, over in the constructors side of things, it is McLaren who lead the way, a gap of 172 points to Mercedes. McLaren really having a one hand on the trophy almost, it seems, as we get to round 9. Mercedes in 2nd, Red Bull, Ferrari, Williams having one of their best seasons in recent history in the top 5 ahead of Haas. Racing Bulls jumped up to 7th after a double point score in Monaco last time out, followed by Aston Martin, Alpine and Sauber 10th and last, but all 10 teams off the mark with points as well. Just 3 points, Ollie, separating Oscar Piastri and Lando Norris. At some point, we're going to be talking about the dynamics in this team. I mean, we already have been, but can we have a nice, clean, fair fight between these two or not? What are you expecting to happen?
So far this year and last year as well, they've been fighting quite fairly. Their relationship, as we can see it on TV and in the media, seems to be staying pretty stable at the moment, and their battles on track are being fought fairly well between each other. Touch wood, there's been no contacts or big dramas yet, but as we get to the end of the season and that gap starts to come down with new regs coming in next year, who knows, is this McLaren's year to really take the title? And then they both will know that. So yeah, who will take the title at the end of the year? Who knows, and how will it be done?
Well, you also, you know Piastri a little bit as well, and a lot has been made about his mentality as a driver. He seems so cool, calm, collected. Will that give him an edge?
Potentially, yeah. Oscar has not really changed since he got to Formula 1. Since I first met him in 2017 as a teammate in Formula 4, yeah, very calm, cool, collected. Seems to not care, which is not true at all. He cares very deeply, but he doesn't have these big emotional ups and downs, which in a title fight, when things go your way or aren't going your way, is what you need to stay on that consistent edge and not let things that might be out of your control affect you too much. So it's definitely a title mentality, and something that is definitely a bonus for him.
Well, on the flip side then, you've got Lando Norris, who maybe has that now swing in momentum, it seems, after a couple of uncharacteristic weekends from Oscar Piastri, braking early, which we know he won't be happy about, in Imola, at Tamburello on lap 1, and then of course a couple of crashes actually during the Monaco Grand Prix weekend. Still obviously ended up on the podium, so bagged some crucial points for him. But you know, we've seen this time and time again. You know, I always come to Barcelona and I always think of Nico Rosberg and Lewis Hamilton taking each other out on lap 1. That's what allowed Max Verstappen to come through on debut for Red Bull and take that first victory. So it's just a good reminder of, well, you can be friends, and Lewis Hamilton and Nico Rosberg were great friends before suddenly they had a car that they could challenge for a world championship, and it was just those two who could challenge, and it ended in tears at times, and then their relationship broke up as a result. Of course, Nico Rosberg managed to take the championship that year, but it wasn't without fighting hard and sacrificing everything for it. Let's bring in the BBC's F1 correspondent Andrew Benson on this. I mean, Andrew, am I stirring the pot here between Piastri and Norris and trying to find something where there isn't? Because at the end of the day, you're in a team and you have a car that can challenge for what could be your first world title. You can't stay friends throughout the whole season.
Well, historically, Harry, of course, it always ends in tears, doesn't it, when two teammates go for the championship together. Think of Mansell and Piquet at Williams, Senna and Prost at McLaren, Hamilton and Rosberg at Mercedes, Hamilton and Alonso at McLaren. But and I'm not saying, I don't want to sound naive here, but I think that there's something about the personalities of Piastri and Norris and the way McLaren have handled it so far that makes me think that if there's any team and any pair of drivers that can stop that going nuclear, then this might be it. I think the team have handled it in a very sensible way. So Zak Brown, the CEO, has been saying, we know they're going to have a crash together at some point. It's just going to happen. We accept that under our philosophy of allowing them to race each other while they're going for the championship. We'll deal with that. But they've been very straightforward and upfront about it. You know, they've got the drivers to buy into this philosophy that you race for McLaren, you race for McLaren primarily and first, and your interests come second. Now, of course, drivers are selfish people, but Andrea Stella, the team principal, he's been very adult about it, and he's handled any vague touch points that have been so far quite well, I think. And both drivers at the moment are talking as if they understand the idea behind it. So Piastri, for example, was saying on Thursday here in Spain that we're not going to do anything that's unsportsmanlike or puts the team in a bad light or ourselves in a bad light. That's just not who Lando and I are. And that could be related to, for example, Rosberg going down the escape road at Mirabeau in Monaco qualifying in 2014, which made Hamilton really angry, or moving over very aggressively on Hamilton in both Spa in 2014 and then here in Barcelona in 2016, or Senna reneging on an agreement on the first lap in Imola not to overtake, for example, and he used the excuse that it was a restart, so it didn't apply anymore. Piastri goes on, we want to go out and beat each other every weekend, but we're never going to cross that line that's going to cause damage that can't be repaired, because, and I've said it a few times now, we don't want just one opportunity at this. We're both at McLaren for a very long time after this year, and we want to fight for the championship every single year. We both understand it's pretty unwise to try and win one championship and bring the house down with it. Now, of course, it's easy to say that at the beginning of June or the end of May, as it was when he said it. It's another thing to apply that philosophy when it gets to October, for example, when it really is the championship on the line. But at the moment, if there's going to be a pair of drivers who are going to manage it, I think it'll be these two, just because of their personalities. Whether it actually works like that when it comes to it, we'll have to wait and see.
Oh, well, it could set us up for quite an enthralling fight throughout the season. So let's see, but it's certainly going to be a dynamic that has more and more scrutiny placed upon it. 42 minutes and 8 seconds remaining of this final practice session before we go qualifying. And actually, it's a good excuse to do a hashtag BBC F1. Or we have an email address now as well, by the way. It's f1@bbc.co.uk. Your best teammate rivalries. Let's have that. Your best ones. Andrew's listed off about pretty much all of them there. But if you've got any more, we would like to hear them. We've had, obviously, Hamilton, Rosberg, Senna against Prost. But any more with some good examples as well. Send them in. Hashtag BBC F1 or f1@bbc.co.uk on the email. And we will try and get to them throughout the session. Best F1 teammate ding-dong battle, Ollie Caldwell, for you?
I think it's got to be a multi-21 with Seb and Mark Webber throwing it back not too long ago, but
Good
one of the most famous ones there. They had quite a few battles on track, didn't they? But I think, like Andrew said, Oscar and Lando, they're behaving at the moment. McLaren has a nice, healthy lead in the team's championship. Let's see how it goes, and let's see if they stay true to those words near the end of the season.
Multi-21 is like, I feel it's a core memory for me in Formula One. Incredible. I actually replayed that race recently, I think, on the Formula One YouTube, and absolutely gripping even now, over a decade later. Lap time's coming in though, finally, as the track starts to get a little bit busier. Carlos Sainz to the roar of the Spanish fans in the grandstand, has gone fastest in the Williams, a 1:14.1. He's on the soft tyre. Then he's got 4/10 over Lando Norris out there on the medium tyre. Lawson's up to third, Tsunoda fourth, with Esteban Ocon the top 5. Then it's Oliver Behrman in sixth, ahead of Bortoleto. Gasly, Colapinto, Hulkenberg the top 10, and all of those who have set a representative lap time, although we have now got Stroll, Alonso, Piastri, Leclerc, Hamilton, Albon, Verstappen and Hadjar all out onto the track. Interestingly, Mercedes yet to go out onto the circuit. Both Kimi Antonelli and George Russell still in the pits. And I wonder if Mercedes are in maybe a better place than we thought they might be. We know the hotter temperatures haven't always been, recent times haven't been their best, but it seems like they are a little closer. I was looking at the times yesterday from FP1 and FP2. I just wonder if McLaren were maybe just edging their advantage slightly. We don't know the engine modes, of course, but do you think Mercedes can bring something to the party, especially after a pretty rough ride in Monaco last week?
George has been very consistent this year. You know, he's still, I think, P4 in the Drivers' Championship, so he's hanging in there. Mercedes always looking fairly strong. George finishing second in free practice 2 yesterday, only just over 2.5 tenths off Oscar Piastri. I wouldn't rule them out. They should both be in Q3, George Russell and Kimi Antonelli, and if one of the McLarens or the Red Bull has a bad lap, they could be right up there in the fight for the podium in the race.
How have you looked at Kimi Antonelli's season so far?
He's doing a great job. As a rookie to jump in, okay, he's been very well nurtured and prepared by Mercedes, but he had very big shoes to fill. No one's expecting him to obviously fill the shoes of Lewis Hamilton. They all asked that he be close to his teammate George Russell, who has now taken the lead of that team, and he is. You know, he had a very difficult race in Melbourne as a rookie, but performed outstandingly in those horrible conditions, and he is staying with George, who is no slouch, obviously this season. So yeah, as rookies go, a lot of pressure being piled on him, but he seems to be taking it well.
Didn't actually score here in Formula 2 last year, did Kimi Antonelli, but he has been on the podium back in his Formula Regional days the year before that. Technically the youngest ever pole sitter, thanks to his sprint pole in Miami, but that is the only annoying thing about these sprints, is they really they always bring a caveat now whenever it comes to the stats. So obviously not yet the youngest ever pole sitter in Grand Prix terms, but never say never. He's still got time to do that. You mentioned George Russell obviously stepping up and leading that team. I've been really impressed by George this year. I think he really has stepped up. He's making his way through the right-hander at turn 3 now at the moment. This is the sound of George Russell, and I feel like he has really... Again, I don't think he's stepping into the shoes of Lewis Hamilton, but he's made it his own. You know, he's come in and he's been Lewis Hamilton's teammate. He showed that he's got the pace to match and beat Hamilton. And now it's actually, I think, a really crucial point in George's career to make this step up and show that he is the leader of that team going forward.
Yeah, definitely. It was a big ask for him to step into the Mercedes as a teammate to Lewis Hamilton, but he did that well. He learned from Lewis over the years that they were there. And like you say, he's taken that control of the team strongly, confidently, but in his own way. He's not trying to replicate Lewis Hamilton. He's doing it in his own way and bringing the team with him on that, as he's on a fast lap on the soft compound, going purple set to 1 and set to 2.
Yeah, just one corner to go, almost flat out round the final right-hander. He'll go to the top of the times on that soft tyre for George Russell. A 1:13.396 in the Mercedes. Mixture of tyres out there, though, as we have the quali runs and a couple of long runs too that we'll get to grips with, but all focus really on locking in your setup with qualifying and that power hour coming up a little later on today. You can hear qualifying in full, by the way, for the Spanish Grand Prix. We'll be on Sports Extra 2, which you can find on the BBC Sounds app.
I have something hard on my left leg of my seat, so if I can just check that, that'd be good.
Copy. Oscar Piastri then, something hard on my left leg, so he's back into the pits and looks like he's been lifted up onto the jacks and will be wheeled back in. It's interesting, I think, I can't remember what race it was now. It was recently, though. Might well have been Imola or maybe Miami, where Lando Norris had some tools left in the cockpit of his car during a practice session, and not little tools. They pulled out a rather big screwdriver at one point, I think. But it just underlines how sensitive you are as a driver, right, when you're in the cockpit of that car.
Yeah, definitely. That was a very odd mistake by McLaren and the mechanics there, but easily done if you're under a last-minute rush to get something fitted in the car, or some things not going quite as well. But of course, you're being thrown around at a huge amount of G's here. Anything small, it could even be the seat is just a couple of millimeters out of position, not being put in quite the same way, can really force you into the seat in a way that you haven't experienced, and then you do feel it. But yeah, Lando was, I wasn't sure what he was going to pull out next, but that was an odd scenario.
Yeah, well, he's gone back into the pits for Piastri to get that removed. 35 minutes and 10 seconds remain. It's Russell, Norris, Leclerc, the top three. Hamilton, Sainz, the top five. Verstappen, Alonso, Albon, Hadjar, Stroll, the top 10. Piastri's 11th ahead of Hulkenberg. Then it's Lawson, Tsunoda, Gasly, the top 15. Ocon, Behrman, Bortoletto, Colapinto, the 19 drivers who've all been out there to set a lap time. Kimi Antonelli, no time on the board yet for him, as he is yet to come out of the pit lane. So, no problem being reported by Mercedes about Kimi Antonelli, so just biding his time before he comes out. Hashtag BBCF1, your best teammate ding-dongs. Hashtag, I should say, at Chapin, who has said, very much in line with you, Ollie, Vettel and Webber, very entertaining, considering yesterday was the 15th anniversary of their Istanbul 2010 crash. And the fallout there, that was another iconic moment between those two. That really was good rivalry, I thought. That was one of the highlights. And in a way, I wish we had that with Red Bull now, but they've sort of fallen into this train of one driver is the leader, because that one driver is Max Verstappen, and we're not going to see a Vettel-Webber thing, really, at the moment, because Tsunoda and, well, let's be fair, whoever has been in that second car has not been anywhere close to have that kind of rivalry.
Yeah, I think the last time Red Bull had it would have been Daniel Ricciardo and Max Verstappen in Baku, which was very similar to Mark Webber and Sebastian Vettel in Istanbul, pretty much copy for copy.
Very good. And David on hashtag BBC1 has been rather brutal and said Leclerc ending Vettel's career at Ferrari. so, I mean, say it how it is, David. We talked from Vettel from Red Bull and then into the Ferrari days, which weren't so fruitful for him. But maybe there could have been a little bit more from him, depending. I think it was at 2018 how that season went for them. But now Leclerc still very much at Ferrari alongside Lewis Hamilton, who's up in fourth. He's on an outlap at the moment. Charles Leclerc on a quick lap coming into the braking zone of turn 10 at the moment. Follows a DRS zone, down on time compared to Russell, though, in the middle sector. Almost half a second actually adrift of George Russell's middle sector. Makes his way round the right-hander of turn number 12. Really makes the rear tyres work there, and then through the right-hander of 13. The pit lane entry comes at you on the right-hand side. Stick on the racing line, round the final corner. Another dose of DRS for Charles Leclerc. Finds time in that final sector, a personal best for him. Stays third fastest for the Monegasque.
Yeah, it looks like he did a second lap on that sort of set of tyres there, down on the middle sector, but yeah, still finding time overall. So whether they just fine-tune the balance of the car and the engine. But George Russell is quite a way up on the P2 of Lando Norris, 4/10 quicker. So Mercedes have, whether they found something magically overnight on the car with the simulated drivers back home doing hard work, or they've gone a bit hard on the engine a bit early in P3 compared to everyone else. We will see when qualifying comes around. But yeah, George Russell doing a great lap at the start of FP3.
Still yet to see Kimi Antonelli, but he has now emerged from the pit lane and is out on the circuit now, just making his way through the left-hander of turn 5 on a quick lap actually as well as Kimi Antonelli coming into the middle sectors. This will be his first flying lap on the soft tyre as one of the Red Bulls. Max Verstappen actually has to cut the chicane at cut the corner I should say at turn 1. There's a little escape road there that you have to take, especially during the race, otherwise you are deemed to have gained an advantage and the penalty will come your way. But he gets out of the way nicely for his teammate Yuki Tsunoda, who was out there on the medium tyre, making his way downhill through the left-hander of turn number 5. Tsunoda, I think yesterday, at a loss to explain why he was slow. And when you're at a loss,
it's difficult to come back from when you don't know yourself why you're slow, and the only thing you can sort of say is I'm not gelling with the car is very difficult. Yeah, Yuki seeming to be not quite getting to grips as quickly with the Red Bull as he would have hoped, and as he sort of said he was going to do at the start of the season. But as we know, this car is super difficult to drive, and no one's really got into it other than Max Verstappen and been able to hustle it around. So Yuki's gap to Max at the moment, a bit less than it was yesterday at about 7/10, but yeah, Yuki Tsunoda down in 15th, while Max Verstappen is up in 7th.
Would you take that seat if you were in a position to?
As I'm not in Formula One, I would take the second Red Bull seat.
Okay, you're in Formula One, you're in the Racing Bulls, or maybe even you go back to Sergio Perez and you were in another midfield team, and that opportunity came up.
If I was Isaac Hadjar, I would be very comfortable staying in the RB for now. Rookie season, still learning Formula One. The car is quick, the car's stable. You have a great relationship now with your engineer and the team. Yeah, if I was Isaac Hadjar, I wouldn't be looking to push myself into that second Red Bull seat at all.
Hadjar, speak of, currently down in 10th. Liam Lawson down in 14th on a lap at the moment, making his way flat out through the right-hander at turn number 9. Gravel there waiting for you if you have a snap. DRS dosage as well for the young Kiwi into the braking zone of the left-hander of turn 10, reprofiled over the last couple of years. Swings you through the left of 11, then round the right-hand side, almost in a U-bend of 12, out the exit of 13, but he runs a little bit wide and gets his rear left tyre into the gravel, manages to keep it pointed in the right direction, but backs out of it and comes into the pits.
Yeah, got a big snap of oversteer on power out the exit of turn 12. That's where we're seeing the rear tyres struggling a lot, so to put it in the gravel there, just dipping both of the lefts in, enough to abort the lap and head straight into the pit lane. It's been a bit of a weird and slow start to this FP3. We were nearly 20 minutes into the beginning of it, seeing people stood outside the car. Oscar was at the back of the garage with his earphones in. Lewis Hamilton was just stood next to his car. So team's not really rushing to head out on track, and a lot of split strategies between people in the medium tyre and on the soft.
That was the sound of Liam Lawson just heading over the gravel, snap on that front end. Bit of traffic as well from the Alpine of Colapinto, but it was out of the way as Lawson's now made it back to the pits. We are continuing our best teammate ding-dong chat on the hashtag BBCF1, which someone has pointed out. I did not direct you where to use that. It's on Twitter or X or whatever we're calling it these days. I'm pretty sure that's the only place to use a hashtag. Right, Producer Joe? No? Do you use... Can you use it on Instagram? I don't know. Okay, anyway, but maybe email. Tell you what, email's flying. f1@bbc.co.uk. This is from Jason, who's currently painting the utility room. I'm glad for our company, so very pleased. I hope the paint day's going down well. Reminds me, I need my ceiling painted, actually, by the way. Good morning. I would like to add Hunt and Lauda in 76. I think we can accept that one. I think there was a pretty good movie made about that one. Then, yeah, I know it's called Rush, Producer Joe. Don't need to remind me about that. Sometimes I wish you were mic'd up. That would be excellent. For practice only, but not for qualifying. What have we got here? Jacob Atkins has said, I think Ralf Schumacher and Juan Pablo Montoya had a very spicy relationship as Williams teammates. A few years ago, JPM said he mentally destroyed Ralf during their years together, and there were rumours they almost came to blows. On track, they were quite even title contenders in 2003 when Ferrari and Michael Schumacher had a bit of a wobbly year. Bit of an outside contender, that one.
I remember an interesting story that has just reminded me of Michael Schumacher and Nico Rosberg. Now, while they were teammates and there wasn't any big blow-ups, I remember the story of Nico saying that Michael Schumacher would used to go into the toilet before a session and stay in there up until the last moment. So Nico Rosberg couldn't go for a pre-session wee. And would then be sat in the car, desperately needing the toilet, while Michael smiled at him on the way out and, got strapped into the car nice and comfortable.
You've got picking out some good memories, Ollie Caldwell. That's a good one. Very good one. Although I think, Nico did really have the upper hand mainly on Michael Schumacher during those years. But every position matters. Another one on the email, BBC, f1@bbc.co.uk. This one coming in from Phil. It is true. Is it true, unbelievably, that the new F1 film doesn't feature Andrew Benson's long-run corner? Is this why the drivers that saw it said it's not very realistic and worried it might be a flop? I tell you what, Phil, you bring up excellent point. I've actually not had a chance to see it. Can we go direct to Five Lives Race Centre? Can we check in with the BBC's F1 correspondent, Andrew Benson? Andrew, are you hearing the rumours that the new F1 movie doesn't feature long run corner and the backlash that's coming off the back of it?
I am not in a movie in any way, shape or form, I can assure you of that. Thank goodness.
I'm actually shocked because you have a habit of getting into some dramatic photos that are taken, whether it's Max Verstappen outside a press conference or alongside Fernando Alonso outside Paddock Club in Miami. You have a habit of getting your face in places.
Well, I was just doing my job in both those instances, Harry. But yeah, I mean, there are many people in F1 media who are in the film. I've got some quite funny stories that are probably not on air, actually, about a couple of them. But it might puncture a few egos if I told them on air. But anyway, yeah, no, I think the written media are generally kept out of it, but some of the broadcasters are definitely in it. People like the Sky commentators and Will Buxton, who was an F1 analyst who's now gone to IndyCar this year. They're all over the movie.
Sounds like they didn't want a piece of the Five Live.
No
long run corner. They didn't want a piece of the Five Live team, did they? Andrew, one more for you. We're talking obviously about teammate rivalries. You mentioned a few when we came in, but are there any others that come to mind that maybe a little left field that you can throw into the equation? No.
Oh, Villeneuve and Pironi, I don't think you've mentioned that yet.
Oh, no, very good. There's a good film about that, actually, as well, isn't it?
And Prost and Arnoux, they fell out at Renault.
Yeah, these are good.
Yeah.
I think, Ollie, you also mentioned earlier, I mean, not exactly one of the top tier, but Esteban Ocon against Sergio Perez, they had quite a few ding-dongs. Not title rivalries, but certainly they were...
They were hitting each other on track quite a bit, which is not something you see often in Formula 1, especially when you're just fighting for the points in sort of 9th or 10th. Yeah, they would take it to an extreme.
Keep them coming. Keep them coming. Your best teammate rivalries. Hashtag BBCF1 on Twitter or X. And our email address is f1@bbc.co.uk. We were talking about the F1 movie there. That's out soon, actually. And we're doing a special show on the Checkered Flag podcast feed next week, which will be available to download on BBC Sounds and wherever you get your podcasts. It's an additional back at base inside the F1 movie, taking you behind the scenes of how it all came together. Brad Pitt, of course, starring, and that film being made over the last, what feels like a million years in Formula 1. But there's a lot of hype around it. The drivers got a sneak peek of it last time in Monaco with an exclusive viewing of it, and there was some mixed reviews, but I think a lot of people ultimately, if you can take it for what it is as entertainment, and it's a bit like we're in this Drive to Survive era now, right? If you're in the sport, it's probably not designed for you, but if you can put that to one side, it's still a benefit for what we're all doing here.
Yeah, I think you've got to take it for what it is. It's a boost to the sport. It can show some rivalries in a different way, and it's great that they did include the teams and drivers in it. It was an exclusive viewing. You were in Monaco. Did you get an invite?
I think my one got lost at the post. I didn't get one.
No
Shocking.
red carpet treatment for you.
It was shocking, really. Absolutely shocking. I was fuming about it. I'm not even going to the outdoor. They're doing one in New York, I think, after Canada, and I'm still waiting for the invite on that one as well. So I think I'll be going to my local cinema down the road when it comes out.
It's your change of address. That's the issue.
That is
going to the old one.
That is true. I need to do my the old reroute. Robert, hashtag BBCF1. The nastiest has to be PK Mansell on track, but it also got personal off track. That's what we never like to see. And Amit has got in touch saying, I was in the grandstand at Suzuka. Oh, this is about the film. I was in the grandstand at Suzuka in 2024, and that was being filmed for crowd reaction shots with the Apex GP flags for the F1 movie. So I'll need to see if I'm in it. That's the thing. Can you spot yourself in the F1 movie? Have you been in the grandstand, or have you somehow managed to? Have you had one of those swanky tickets and managed to get yourself in a nice hospitality area somewhere? Who knows? You could be in the F1 movie. But yeah, back at base, we'll be doing a special podcast on that on our Checkered Flag feed. So if you are already subscribed to the Checkered Flag podcast, you need to do nothing apart from wait for it to come out, which it will be next week. Let's bring you back to some of the on-track action now, as FP3 is 21 minutes and 27, 26, 25 seconds remaining of this final practice session before we lock in for qualifying later on. You can hear that on Sports Extra 2 from 2:55 this afternoon, ahead of the green light going on at 3 o'clock later on. At the moment, it is George Russell who is fastest, a 1:13.3. Kimi Antonelli, after waiting a long time to come out of the pits, right up there with his teammate, although he was about 4 tenths adrift, in second place. The two Mercedes drivers setting those lap times on the soft tyre. Then it's Lando Norris in third, Leclerc fourth, Hamilton is the top five with Alonso, Verstappen, Sainz, Albon, Hadjar the top 10, with Stroll, Piastri, Hulkenberg, Lawson, Tsunoda the top 15, Gasly, Ocon, Behrman, Bortoletto and Franco Colapinto, the 20 drivers in this session, as the track has fallen a little quiet. You can hear the sounds of Russell and Antonelli out there along with Sainz, Lawson and Gasly, but everybody else has come back into the pits. A little bit of a lull time before I think it will be rather full on towards the end of the session, and we will see what everyone's got come these quali runs.
Kimi's done a good job there. He's gone out on track. He's completed 4 laps, so he's done a short quali run. Obviously we don't know what engine or fuel he's on, but it will be comparable to George Russell, and plonked himself second on the timing screen. 4:10 off still from George Russell, so shows, you know, even inside the team, what a good lap that was from George to go that much quicker.
No, not at all. We're seeing Antonelli making his way down. Start finish straight now. One of 2 DRS zones here. DRS giving you about a 0.54 of a second gain when you are within the second of the car in front of you during the race in the allocated areas, which are between the final corner and turn 1, and coming out of turn 9 into the hairpin of turn 10. As you hit the brakes, the DRS will close on you. Antonelli making his way through the right-hander of turn 4, touch of the brakes into the left-hander, downhill of turn 5. Then it's a short blast towards turn number 6 is taken really flat out. It's just a slight left-hand kink, and then you get to the tricky 7 and 8, which takes you back uphill. Swing it left, slight right, as fast as you can through the right-hander of turn 9, which brings you up and over the crest onto that second DRS, straight into the hairpin of turn 10, and Antonelli running out wide, all 4 wheels off the track as well, past the white line. Track limits there being watched. And not pushing on this lap though particularly is Kimi Antonelli, with 1 corner to go, flat out around the final right-hander, brings you back onto the start-finish straight, past the main grandstand, which is absolutely packed. And actually, when he was pushing fairly, found a bit of time in that last sector, but still over 4/10 adrift of his teammate George Russell.
Yeah, not an improvement on his overall lap time, but a tiny improvement in sector 3. So he's come back in, gone back out on the same set of tyres, as we hear him now just on a replay into that turn 10 where he went wide, braking, turns in fine, no lockups, but just runs out wide and loses the front end. So that'll be on the very edge of track limits. I'm sure Race Control will be looking at that. But yeah, wind condition here is moving around quite a bit. It doesn't seem to be stable in one direction. It's sort of flopping around between a headwind into turn 10 and then a side wind, and gusty as well. Yeah, not very consistent as yesterday.
So just to carry on with our Antonelli chat a little bit, probably an unpopular opinion, which I will throw out there, is that yes, Antonelli is clearly fast and rapid, but on the whole, Miami was a really good weekend for him, but on the whole, he's been about 4/10 of a second back from George Russell. I think that's fair. We're not scrutinising that as much as we are the 4/10 gap at times that has been between Verstappen and a Yuki Tsunoda, or even when Jack Doohan was going up against Pierre Gasly. So actually, is there a part that needs to see a little bit more from Antonelli, considering he has been billed as this wonder kid Mercedes Max Verstappen?
Yeah, I think it's hard to compare, you know, the gap of Max Verstappen to Yuki Tsunoda, because, you know, they're both very experienced drivers, and I would expect that gap to be less. But compared to other rookies in the fold, like you say, the Jack Doohan to Pierre Gasly gap, I think you're right. I think, you know, Kimi is performing well, and it looks far better than it does because the car is quick enough to be solidly in the top 10. He got that sprint pole in Miami, which was a great lap at the first time at Miami for him. But yeah, I think Mercedes will be looking into it, and they'll be expecting him to keep developing over the year, which he does seem to be doing.
Well, hello Max Verstappen, who has just crossed the line on the soft tyre and gone fastest by 21 thousandths of a second. The Dutchman with a 1:13.375. So into the last 15 minutes or so. Well, if you want a proper sync up, it's 16 minutes and 24, 23, 22 seconds remain of this final practice session. and starting to see the final quali runs as they make their way out onto the circuit slowly, one by one. It starts to get a little busier in the closing stages of this session, and before it does so, we just have one last check of the email, shall we? f1@bbc.co.uk, or indeed on the hashtag BBCF1 on Twitter/X. Kev, Hamilton and Alonso, 2007, one of the greatest teammate rivalries. Nodding an agreement there, Ollie.
Yeah, we also saw some pretty dirty tactics used there just to go in. Lando Norris has gone very wide at turn 9, going actually behind the gravel that's on the exit there and down the escape road. So obviously had quite a large moment on the entry of turn 9 and running way off the track. Not really somewhere that we see these cars going, as his engineer and team managers look on with a shake of the head. Pretty scary corner to go that wide at. But yeah, Lewis and Fernando Alonso back when they had their rivalry. We did see some dirty tactics used there, waiting in the pit lane, things like that, which is, not always seen as the best thing to be doing.
And another one from Hittel, who has said he's painting with his 8-year-old son, Devon, in the box room. Please can we have a shout out? A massive shout out to Devon and Hittel, painting the box room. A lot of people painting today on a Saturday. Must be the day for it.
Are you, when was the last time you painted something? Are you an artist?
Me, myself, no. I did have a room painted recently for me, but not done by me. So I don't trust myself with a paintbrush. Getting Andrew Benson's, he has of course got the exact gap, average qualifying gap. Now this will be interesting. I think I was sort of thinking this maybe before we got to the Miami stage of the race, of the weekend. Average qualifying gap between Russell and Antonelli, much smaller than it is between Verstappen and Tsunoda. Just under 0.3 of a second, whereas Verstappen and Tsunoda's is 0.7 of a second. I'm not trying to do a direct comparison here. I think the better comparison is probably when we had a Jack Doohan coming in, and he was not that far away from his teammate, but in this modern day of age, 2, 3, 0.4 of a second, that is absolutely massive. It can separate one car from being in the top 10 to right at the bottom. I just wonder if sometimes we were a little... The gap that was there at the start of the year between Russell and Antonelli was a little bigger, and because he's being hyped up so much, you just wonder how has he dealt with that pressure too. So definitely, I'm not trying to say that Antonelli is out of his depth one bit, but I just think it's something worth keeping an eye on throughout the year. When you're built that highly, you do have to deliver.
Yeah, definitely. And, I think he did deliver that early in the season in that very difficult race in Melbourne. And he is staying fairly consistent, making small gains, not making any big mistakes. And Mercedes is P2 in the Constructors, which they'll be very happy with. McLaren has 2 very strong, dominant drivers, a dominant car. So for Mercedes to be second, I think Toto is fairly happy with that, and Toto obviously rates Kimi extremely highly. So yeah, they'll expect a bit more development, but naturally that's going to come. And George has had many years in Formula One now, not just many years at Mercedes, but many years at Williams beforehand. So a huge amount of experience, and their relationship seems to be going well as well. I think George is teaching Kimi, as he should be doing. But yeah, the team dynamic there seems strong as well.
Hasn't stood on the podium yet though, has Kimi Antonelli, but is in the top 7 of the Drivers' Championship. We talk about this getting used to your new surroundings quite a lot. It's one thing for a rookie, but also drivers that have switched teams. Lewis Hamilton in the Ferrari, Carlos Sainz going to Williams, Esteban Ocon going to Haas. When you've moved teams around in the junior categories, how actually long does it take to feel settled and know where the kettle is?
It really depends, like we mentioned yesterday, on the relationship that you have with your engineer, because you could bring the same team, very close team over with you from another team, your physio, your nutritionist. Some people even bring their press officers across from different teams, but the engineer doesn't always change. We've seen that with Lewis Hamilton, and they really are the guy who has to have your back, guy or girl who has to have your back. And it sometimes works and it sometimes doesn't. I think Lewis Hamilton had such a strong relationship with his old engineer, Bono, and maybe doesn't have that same level of feeling of commitment from his current engineer at Ferrari, whereas Esteban Ocon seems to be a bit happier with his new engineer. So it's all to do with the team and the personal relationships there, and you really need to be on a great level with your engineer.
Well, talking about being on a great level, Oscar Piastri, fastest of anybody through the first sector, making his way to the right-hander at turn 9 now. Flat out, the rear wing will fly open as he crosses the DRS line, getting up to speeds of over 300 kilometres an hour before he hits the brakes. He's almost 7.5 tenths up on Max Verstappen's middle sector. This is a mighty lap from Oscar Piastri through the right-hander. He swings that papaya McLaren out over the crest at 12.
So Lando, in turn 9, we think it wasn't touching, but we saw porpoising. So if we want to fix that, we'd have to box now to lift at the rear.
As Piastri goes top, porpoising, and that old word rearing its head once again, the bouncing up and down that these ground effect cars experienced quite badly right at the start when they were first introduced back in 2022. Well, that was Lando Norris's radio you heard with Will Joseph, his engineer, telling him, well, if we want to sort this porpoising out, we're going to have to pit you and raise the rear up, which of course with this generation of car you want to keep it as low to the ground as possible.
Yeah, Lando definitely not quite as happy with his car today as he was yesterday. We saw he had that very big moment literally at the apex of turn 9. Big snap of oversteer, forcing him very wide. Luckily he caught the car and just went very deep off into a small runoff road that's there, half a second off of his teammate Oscar Piastri. But I'm wondering if that porpoising is potentially caused by this unstable wind. I'm looking at the weather radar now and it really is just blowing around 360 degrees, depending on when you look at it, and with speeds changing from 2 or 3 meters a second down to 0. So yeah, the wind is definitely not consistent, and that will be playing a bit of havoc with the cars.
Yeah, hot out there as well. Air temperature 29.9 degrees, track temperature 47.2 degrees as the sun beats down on the Circuit de Barcelona Catalunya, which is where we find ourselves for round 9 of the Formula One World Championship, with less than 10 minutes to go of this final practice session before we go qualifying later on. You can hear that on Sports Extra 2 from 2:55 this afternoon ahead of the green light for 3 o'clock. And if you want to find Sports Extra 2, just head to the BBC Sounds app, scroll the dial at the top of the screen until you find 5 Live, then you'll see Sports Extra, and then you'll see Sports Extra 2 and Sports Extra 3. So more streams available to you from the BBC Radio 5 Live family for all the commentaries that we're going to be able to bring you live and in full, and hopefully a lot easier too through the BBC Sounds app. Right now though, it is FP3. It's half a second between Oscar Piastri and Lando Norris. Piastri with a brilliant flying lap on that soft tyre. Norris with struggles with porpoising in that McLaren. Charles Leclerc is currently up in 3rd with Verstappen and Hadjar, who has got that Racing Bulls up in 5th, but is almost a second adrift from Piastri's time. Let's see what Lewis Hamilton can offer. He's out there on the soft at the moment, putting in a quick lap, but it's not going purple. He's got personal best now. He's stuck the soft tyre on, up over the crest at 12, heads slightly downhill through the right-hander of 13, 1 corner to go, another right-hander through the 14th and final corner, building up speed across the line. It's only enough for 8th spot as he lost a bit of time in that final sector.
Bortoleto and Hülkenberg doing some nice lap times respectively in 9th and 10th. Bortoleto ahead of his more experienced teammate. Potentially a team that could be benefiting from this rule change. We saw Hülkenberg up in, was it 12th yesterday, having a bit of a better weekend than we've seen before.
Yeah, both Saubers, 9th and 10th, 1.3 seconds off. Good for Gabriel Bortoleto. His main goal this year to match and at times beat Nico Hülkenberg, much more experienced teammate in a car that is proving tricky to drive. And let's see, maybe this technical directive is helping teams like Sauber further back, just bringing them into the hunt a little bit more, with the permitted level of flex reduced from 15 millimetres to 10 millimetres of movement. But what is clear is that it looks like McLaren's advantage has suddenly revealed itself and stretched both on fresh soft tyres, Piastri and Norris, and actually Piastri properly dialed in with the better lap time of half a second. The nearest rival is the Ferrari of Charles Leclerc, still a whopping 7 tenths back. Of course, it is still practice, not everyone shows their full hand, but there might be a wry smile from the McLaren camp on that one.
Yeah, I mean, no one is pushing to an absolute 110% in practice, but that will go for McLaren as well. It's not like they've just whacked on a full quali setup in P3. I'd say that Lando Norris could have matched or beaten Oscar Piastri's time without that moment in turn 9. Yes, nearly 7.5 tenths to Charles Leclerc in P3 is a huge gap, and yeah, maybe some teams asking to go back to the old rules potentially after this weekend.
Well, Russell's just crossed the line as well, and having looked quick earlier on, now he has only slotted into 4th, 7.5 tenths back. It's Piastri, Norris, Leclerc, Russell, Verstappen the top 5, Hadjar is 6th, followed by Antonelli and Alonso, the top 8. Well, it's covered by a second, but in this day and age, that's a rather large gap. Behind Alonso, Hamilton 9th, Liam Lawson 10th, Bortoletto, Hulkenberg, as Carlos Sainz does what Liam Lawson did a few laps ago and out of the exit of turn 12, finds the gravel, drags it with him and keeps his foot planted from 17th. Well, lost time in that final sector, still improves overall though for the Spaniard, up to 13th place in that Williams, which doesn't seem as strong around this track as we've seen it in recent times. Williams having one of their best years of racing so far, with Alex Albon having 3 top 5 finishes so far in 2025. Carlos Sainz 5 points finishes. Williams sitting pretty, for them at least, in fifth with 54 points to their name. This is the sound of Sainz heading over to the gravel. A little touch, keeps his foot planted though, Ollie.
Yeah, not optimal, you could call that. Yeah, down in 13th with a 13.7. He'll have lost a couple of tenths just from going to the gravel. Bad traction there, and you know, not ideal for the last, heading on to the last 2 nearly flat out corners. So yeah, could have been a top 10 there. We'll see in qualifying and how hard they are. But his teammate Alex Albon down in 19th of 14.2 didn't do quite as well a lap in that practice session.
No, and Alex has been in the garage for quite a while now with Alex Albon's car, work being done right up on the jacks. Williams have said they have an issue that they are investigating further. That's all they're telling us at the moment. So the problems then for Alex Albon, missing out on crucial track time because he missed FP1 as well, so he's really down on laps here. But for Williams, well, no points in Spain since 2016. 13 years since their last win in Formula One, courtesy of Pastor Maldonado. What a day that was.
What a day, and what a guy to have done it. You know, but yeah, that's long, and what a comeback the Williams have had in the last, 10 years, and McLaren as well. I was just thinking about it. 2 teams that at one point were really, really struggling, and now both outperforming. Who would have thought all those years ago when they were down in the dumps? But what a swing around they've had, both with exceptional drivers and scoring points and wins in McLaren's case.
Well, you don't have to think too far back to McLaren, with a Honda engine in the back, no sponsors on the car, really quite dire. And I think Jenson Button and Fernando Alonso at one point were having 35 place grid penalties for engine changes, and it was just really, really tough. And what a turnaround for them. Miami a couple of years ago, the first big step forward with an upgrade introduced. 2 incredibly strong drivers. I think one of their best moves was pinching Oscar Piastri from Alpine right under their noses, and having really 2 capable drivers, more than capable drivers, pushing that team forward, taking the Constructors' Championship last year and looking on course to do it again twice in a row. And for one of their drivers, has a pretty good shot at their first world title come the end of this season. But we are only, arriving for round 9. We still have a fair few to go. We've got to get to number 24 in Abu Dhabi. After Spain, though, in this triple header, we have a little bit of a break before we head to Canada. Bit of an outlier, Canada, in this European leg, but we'll do it anyway. And then we have another break, and then we're into Austria, Silverstone. Then we get to our 3rd sprint of the season in Belgium around the Spa-Francorchamps circuit. Hungary, the Netherlands, Italy, all beckon before we then head further afield again to Azerbaijan and Singapore, and then the final leg, Austin, Mexico, Brazil, Vegas, Qatar, and the season finale in Abu Dhabi. Are you quite happy with the calendar length at the moment? Do you think 24 is a good number? Less?
24 is a lot. 24 is a lot. I think the teams and the drivers don't want any more. I think that's been fairly said across the paddock. I think a bit less would be nicer on everyone, but it's where we are, and it's nice to have racing on, you know, quite a lot of weekends of the year and see the championship go on this long, because if it was like this and the championship was short, well, then you'd be asking for more races. So yeah, it's good to have such a variety in tracks in places across the globe that Formula One goes to, and we can see, you know, who shines where. With a minute and a half coming up left and not many people doing fast laps, what is your favourite race of the season from the outside?
What that we've had so far, or in general?
In general, what's one place that you really love just to watch?
To watch? Oh, that's a hard question. That is a hard question. Japan. I love Suzuka. I think the track is immense. The place is amazing. And I in that top tier. I know it's a bit of an easy answer maybe, but I think Suzuka's right up there.
Yeah, they've got unbelievable fans who just really love the sport and do such, you know, intriguing and interesting things to support the teams and drivers. The track is, incredible 130R. You know, you see the onboards there of how fast they're going and some very brave overtakes. That is, good answer.
You?
I've never driven there.
Have you not? Oh.
I haven't. I've done Fuji.
Okay.
So another track in Japan. I would love to do Suzuka because it's just incredible. I'm
Get yourself in a Super Formula car.
Yeah.
Have a go with them.
Right. Yeah. I'll I'll do that.
It.
Yeah.
Just
next
rock
week.
up and do it.
Easier.
But go on then. So mine's Suzuka. What's yours? You can't have Suzuka now.
I liked Baku as a driver, which is a controversial choice. As we see, Max Verstappen dip a wheel into the gravel. Same place as Carlos Sainz and Liam Lawson on the exit of that turn 12. I wonder what's going on there. A few cars done that, but mine Baku. It's a really cool city race with the modern city that you sort of start the track into that very tight old quarter of the city where we've seen Charles Leclerc's infamous incident. Really cool track, and then that huge straight line with a couple of corners in it, so it's not really straight, but the car going up to insane speeds there, one of the highest speeds we see all year, into that heavy braking in turn 1. It's a very cool street track, I have to say.
I actually love Baku. Obviously, I've never driven it. I've actually scootered around it, and the elevation it does not come across on the camera, on the TV cameras. It's so steep in places, but I love the place. I go every year.
Yeah, it's really cool. You know, that, like you say, that steep incline that you have as you go into the old quarter and then back down into that final sector is very steep. Scootering is close enough, I guess.
Although I think it needed a bit more power to get me and all 6'5" of me up the hill at certain points. Checkered flag is out at the end of this final practice session. It's a mixed up top 10, but one thing is for certain, McLaren, have they laid down a marker at the end of this session, particularly for Oscar Piastri, who tops it by half a second to his teammate Lando Norris, experiencing some porpoising problems. They might well be able to get that sorted, and he can fight back come qualifying in a couple of hours time. But a mighty lap from Oscar Piastri sees him top FP3. Charles Leclerc best of the rest, a 7/10 of a second adrift from the McLaren boys. Charles Leclerc third, George Russell fourth, Max Verstappen the top 5. Isaac Hadjar's up there in 6th ahead of Antonelli. Then it's Alonso, Hamilton and Liam Lawson rounding out the top 10. So the Racing Bulls having a good session. Hamilton will be hoping for a little more there too. Alonso once again up there inside that top 10. Promising signs for the two Sauber drivers. Bortoleto just outside the top 10 and 11th ahead of his teammate Nico Hülkenberg. Sainz, work to do on home soil. Never not scored points at his home race. Finished 13th in this final FP3 session. Tsunoda, another man with work to do in the second Red Bull, down in 14th. Stroll is 15th.
Downshift's not working for me, mate. What's wrong with the gear shift?
Understood. Taking a look.
Gear shift's not working. I got no gear shift.
Perhaps a gearbox problem for Lewis Hamilton, who is coasting through turn 2, and this is the sound of Hamilton, who ended this session in 9th. Let's have a listen. Well, he's still got drive.
Yeah, he managed to pull a gear there, but we're looking at his hands and he is really pressing a lot of buttons on the steering wheel and some of the ones behind as well. Cruising around at 80, 90 kilometers an hour. Seems to be stuck in a gear, or the gear's not working as fluidly as he would like.
No, it really is sort of almost just rolling that car around, but that's the sound of him. just making his way very slowly. Perhaps he's just found a gear and hoping to stay in it until he gets back to the pits. Gasly was 16th ahead of teammate Franco Colapinto. Better session for Colapinto, FP3, just a 10th away from his teammate in that one. Esteban Ocon down in 18th, his teammate Ollie Behrman in 20th. Haas really looking on the back foot going into qualifying, and Alex Albon with some problems that Williams are investigating, curtailing his running, finished down in 19th spot as we get the practice starts. But Ollie, that's it now, isn't it, for practice? Next up it's qualifying, but that was a bit of a statement lap from Oscar Piastri. I know it's only FP3, but half a second clear.
Yeah, McLaren really showing some dominance there and looking confident now going into qualifying. Yeah, I mean, both of those guys are at the top. 1-2 is where you want to be. Ending that third practice session to go into qualifying, and perhaps some teams starting to panic again and not think those rules were enough, maybe.
Pick for pole?
Oscar Piastri.
Okay, I'm going to go also for Oscar Piastri too. It is the Australian who tops the final practice session. That is it. That is all the practice they get. Now, the setups are locked in. We go qualifying next. We'll find out who will start the Spanish Grand Prix from pole position. You can join us for that on Sports Extra 2 on 2:55. We'll be building up with the green light ahead of 3 o'clock. And if you're looking for where to find Sports Extra 2, just head to the BBC Sounds app. Scroll across the dial at the top of your screen until you get to 5 Live. Then scroll again, you'll see Sports Extra, and then you'll see Sports Extra 2 and 3. So more streams available to you for more commentary access. We shall see you then. My thanks to Oliver Caldwell. We'll be back for quali. Who will be on pole position? We will find out in a couple of hours' time. This has been an IMG production for BBC Radio 5 Live.